Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of Dan Tremblay Music. Today we are back in the shed and doing a kind of sound designy sort of a track using primarily the Ondes Musicales patch from the Labs collection from Spitfire Audio, which is free. Almost the entire track you're going to listen to today was created using that library, along with a couple of other lab instruments. And then, of course, I'm mixing that with Native Instruments Noir Piano, which is kind of my favorite plugin at the moment. And so we kind of experiment a little bit with this one. The sounds kind of led me on a certain path in a certain direction. And I tried to manipulate the sound and try to do some different things in this one today. Let's get to it. All right, let's get to this. So I'll go through all the sounds that I used. As usual, try to keep it fairly minimal. So we'll start off with the sound, and you probably know by now that I always try to choose one sound and use it as a catalyst for something to just strike an idea, get things going. So in this case, it was the Mobius Blips sound. Okay, and I'm not sure that I even tweaked with the settings straight out of the box, and I just immediately loved this sound. Just very, very rhythmic sound. So I use it as a rhythmic sound. And as you can see, I actually used 4 instances of that same patch. Okay, so these 4 are all the same patch, but I processed them slightly different, and I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so that's that sound. Okay, and then actually maybe I'll just play through one part at a time here so you can hear what I did. So this is looped, okay, and the reason I looped it is because it's like more of a percussive kind of a thing. I was just playing the same thing the whole time through anyway, so I looped it. As you can see, that was the only thing that was looped, but let's check it out. So it's got a really nice low end. There's a lot of delays and stuff going on. You can hear it kind of trail off. Very, very cool sound. This second patch is actually the exact same sound. It's just a part that's layered over top. So again, with that same kind of rhythmic feel, these are, because they're all rhythmic parts, they're all quantized, locked into the tempo of the track. So that's that patch. And this first one was it was low down the keyboard. So second part, because it's the same patch, same sound, I brought it up an octave. Otherwise, if you're duplicating things with the same sound, the same octave, then you're going to run into all kinds of mixing issues. Then we have the same patch, but this time I messed around with the attack envelope to get more of a kind of a less edgy sound and more of a kind of a synthy sound. So let's check that out. Just kind of like a repeated kind of arpeggiated part that sits over top. As you can see when I stop it, it's got all these like blips and blops all over the place. Very, very cool. So same sound. So if you think about it, I'm 3 tracks in and I've used one patch and I've just manipulated the sound. This is something that I'm really trying to do in everything that I produce now, is I'm trying to get more into the sound design and the manipulation of the sounds, not leave them in their kind of original form. Always trying to mess around with that. This again is the same patch, but this time I put some heavy EQ on it, rolled off all that high because I wanted it just a real low. I called it sub sound. So this, depending on what kind of headphones you have, if you're mixing with a sub, you might want to turn your sub down because I have a feeling there's too much sub low end here. But anyway, we'll find out. I forgot to solo it. There's a solo sound. Almost sounds like if you're like if you're like in a submarine and there's some kind of knocking, there's like a whale knocking at the door. That's what it sounds like. Again, rhythmic part, just to get, it's more like a part that you feel. Okay. Then I layered that with, so these are all from the same Labs library, by the way, Ondes Musicales. This is the ribbon sound, which I think is more the kind of traditional sound of this instrument that they sampled, it seems to me, I think. I don't know that much about it. So let's just play a little bit of this part for you. So just very, very atmospheric sound. It's kind of swimming around. These kind of, before I actually recorded these, and then I might have done these parts first, and then I brought these in afterwards. These are all locked to the tempo. And this one is just kind of like a free form kind of improvisation over top of that, just to kind of, I don't know, just create a nice kind of contrast. And then I have that same sound. These are the exact same two patches. It's just, if you watch this channel, you know that I absolutely hate like punching in, punching out. And I don't know, for me, it's just like I'd much rather just create a second track and overlap. And it's just easier to mix, I guess, at the end of the day. So that's how I roll. And then I have the same library with the granules. To me, that's very reminiscent of something that would be in like one of the Albion series, like in the pads section. Very, very cool sound. So there's not much going on here. Just kept it very, very simple. Just to get kind of some low kind of, just a very, very background information there that kind of runs underneath the track. So it's all about layering. This again is the same pad. Excuse me, the same patch. So there's not really much to talk about there. Just layered. It builds a little bit at the end, and then we have what I use, the metallique. This actually reminds me of a patch from Spectrasonic's Omnisphere, and I'm gonna forget the name of the patch. Boeing Chromium or something like that. It reminds me of that. It's a sound that I use all the time. So that's probably why I use it. It's literally just a part at the end, just to get like a little lift at the end of the track. So those are all from that one Labs library. So just to give you an idea, free samples, look how much you can do with free samples. I have that layered with, and now I'm going to go through the 3 tracks that are not part of the Ondes Musicales collection, just to see how I layered stuff. So this, no surprise here, obsessed with noir piano. This time I'm using the Particles engine. Just be careful, if you are using this engine, you're mixing it with other rhythmic parts. You want to make sure that it is tempo synced to your track, because you have all these repeated delays and everything. And if you have rhythmic tracks in the background that are quantized and this is not synced to your track, it's going to get real muddy real fast. Okay, so let's just listen to a little bit of that. Have I mentioned how much I love this library? With one chord, that's one chord, and then you just mix it around, you mess around with it. Again, don't keep things in their original. Play around with the reverbs, the delays, the colors, the modes, the slider, which changes back and forth between how much particle and how much of the original sound. I don't leave anything in its original kind of state with this library. Really mess around with it. And then this, it was funny. I was actually going through the Labs, and I was just using the back and forth button, and I was going to choose another patch from the Ondes Musicales library. I don't know if I'm saying that right, by the way. And I went too far, and it got to this music box sound, which I've never used. I'm like, well, that's opportunity knocks. So I just threw a little bit of this in there. So I think it works nicely with this track because it's very it's a very close sound. There's not a whole lot of room and hall noise there. There's not a whole lot of reverb in there, and it's a really nice contrast to all the swirling kind of pad sounds and all the low end information. So just gives you a little bit more of a better, a better image across your whole kind of stereo frequency spectrum. And then lastly, I went with another Labs sound. This is just their drum kit. Okay, and I will show you what I did with it. And I'll play it in its an original state, and then I'll tell you how I processed it. This is really just the drums straight out of the Labs. What an incredible part that is, right? Bass and snare. Okay, not much going on there, but it's literally just like a sweetening kind of to the end of the track. So I fooled around with a couple of things in here, and again, it's just when I'm in these parameters, I'm not thinking I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna change this. I'm just quite often recording the part already and playing it back, cycling it, and then changing and manipulating all the sounds, just going by. Just it's an intuitive thing. I'm not saying I'm gonna add this much reverb or I'm gonna add this much delay or I'm just whatever. It's like cooking, and you get all these great ingredients, and then you're kind of maybe gonna throw a little bit of this in here, a little bit of that, or I need a little more garlic. That's the way that I look at it. So how did I process this? So I threw some EQ on there, rolled off a lot of the high to try to muddy it up a little bit. I added a noise gate, probably because I'm an old soul and I harken back to the times of like the 80s and 90s with the gated drums. I love gated drums. And then something I'd never use ever. I used clip distortion in Logic, which I know is used frequently. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to throw it in there. I'm going to see what happens. So I fooled around with a lot of the settings. I went with the warm clip distorted sound. And then lastly, this is the only track, by the way, that has EQ. And I'm just using my, as usual, Valhalla Room Reverb EQ with the low end rolled off on the bus. So this is without anything added. Okay, and now we're gonna EQ it, gate it, clip distortion, add a little reverb, and here's what we got. So as you can see, a wildly different sound, okay? Which for this particular, if I just left the drum kit in its original state, it's gonna stick out like a sore thumb. You're gonna listen to it and be like, that doesn't really quite go with the track. But if I mangle it and manipulate it and EQ it, add some distortion all of a sudden and bring it down in the mix, I think it works really well with this this particular track. So there you go, my friends. Almost the entire song is from the Spitfire Audio Labs. Almost the whole thing, other than the piano, music box, and drums. The music box and the drums are also lab sounds. So the only thing that is not a lab sound is the Noir's particle engine from Native Instruments. You could just as easily replace this with a lab part. There's the felt piano in the Labs, and then you can manipulate it. You can add some delay and all that kind of stuff, and you can try to sort of emulate what's going on in the Particles engine. Will it be as good as what's going on in the Particles engine? No, because it's just one of those incredible plugins, but to give you an idea of different things that you can do. So now I'm going to play the whole track, and we'll have some final thoughts. Here we go. So, final thoughts. Once again, the Labs collection from Spitfire Audio proves that you just don't need to spend a whole lot of cash to create really interesting sounding tracks and textures. And a lot of what goes on in music production, which I'm really beginning to learn, is the manipulation of sounds and turning something that maybe might sound ordinary into something extraordinary. And a lot of that's done either within the plugins itself or within your DAW. So I think knowing your DAW, if it's a Logic, if it's Ableton, if it's a Reason, really that I think is the trick. Being able to play your DAW like it's an instrument, being able to manipulate sounds, trusting your ears, referencing other mixes, referencing other songs that you really like, the difference between active listening and passive listening. So dissecting things and analyzing versus just listening to it and enjoying it. Another thing that I would highly recommend is a series which is called Mix with the Masters, which you can subscribe to. You can also kind of purchase one-offs. I purchased the Phineas. Okay, if you don't know Phineas O'Connell, he is the brother of Billie Eilish. I think Phineas is one of the greatest producers of music, bar none, right now. He's probably the guy. Of course, all the stuff that he's done when he's produced with Billie Eilish and his solo stuff, and then all the other stuff that he's done for all these other artists. Dude has worked with Hans Zimmer, so he's just one of those exceptionally talented guys. I draw a lot of inspiration from him. So it's a really interesting series. I would highly, highly recommend it. Now, if you're watching this channel, you're like, but Dan, you primarily do instrumental music. So whereas Phineas is doing vocal-based music. But production is production, and Phineas knows Logic inside and out, and he uses it like a musical instrument. And his manipulation of sound, and if you listen to his mixes, man, they are fantastic. Does he send them the stems to a final mixing engineer for one final little go through? Yeah, he does. But if you listen to the straight out of the mix that he does, man, they are already sounding fantastic. So it's a really interesting series, and he really goes into his use of sound design, how he uses Logic, stock plugins, stereo delay stock plugin, distortion, sample delay. I mean, he's using Valhalla Room reverb, and it's really interesting. And I think that both Phineas and Billy are kind of trailblazers, and they're really opening up a lot of possibilities for bedroom producers like ourselves. So highly recommend checking it out. Mix with the Masters, Phineas. I think it's like $50 or something like that. Well worth the money if you are as obsessed about music and music production as I am. That's it, my friends. Get busy writing music, recording music, and sharing music. The most important thing. Don't leave it on your hard drive. Send it out into the world. You never know where it's going to end up. Stay safe, my friends.